What if I told you that the most dangerous person in the room isn't the most talented, the most educated, or even the most experienced? It's the most disciplined. Think about that for a second. Every goal you've set and abandoned, every habit you've tried and quit, every version of yourself you almost became, discipline was the missing piece. Not motivation, not luck, discipline. And today I'm going to show you exactly why discipline isn't just a personality trait. It's a skill you can build, a force you can weaponize. If this is the kind of content that actually moves you forward, hit subscribe, because we go deep here. Let's get into it. Section 1. The myth we've all been sold. Let's start with a hard truth that most self-help content will never tell you. We live in a culture that worships motivation. Everywhere you look, Instagram quotes, TikTok reels, YouTube thumbnails, it's all about feeling inspired. Get motivated. Find your why. Believe in yourself. And look, I'm not saying those things are useless, but here's the problem. Motivation is an emotion, and emotions are weather. They come, they go, and you have absolutely zero control over when they show up. You wake up one morning feeling unstoppable. You hit the gym, you meal prep, you journal, you answer every email. You feel like a machine. Then 3 days later, you can barely get off the couch. Sound familiar? That's not a character flaw. That's just how the human brain works. Motivation operates on dopamine, and dopamine is a chemical that spikes and crashes by design. It's not built for consistency. It's built for survival responses and short-term rewards. So when people say, "I just need to stay motivated," what they're really saying is, "I need to feel like doing the right thing every single day." And that is a trap, because the people who actually build great lives, great bodies, great businesses, great relationships, they don't rely on feeling motivated. They rely on discipline. And there's a massive difference between the two. Motivation asks, do I feel like it? Discipline asks, does it need to get done? That shift from feeling-based action to value-based action is the foundation of everything we're going to talk about today. Section 2. What discipline actually is and isn't. Here's where a lot of people get it wrong. When most people hear the word discipline, they picture a Navy SEAL waking up at 4:30 a.m. in the freezing cold. They picture brutal deprivation, extreme sacrifice, no fun, no rest, just grinding 24/7 until you collapse. That's not discipline. That's self-punishment dressed up as productivity. Real discipline is something far more elegant. Let me break it down. Discipline is the ability to take intentional action in alignment with your long-term values, regardless of how you feel in the moment. Read that again slowly. Intentional action, not random hustle, not busy work. Intentional, meaning you know why you're doing what you're doing. In alignment with your long-term values, not someone else's definition of success, not what looks good on social media. Your values, your vision, regardless of how you feel in the moment. This is the part that separates the people who get results from the people who just talk about getting results. Because here's the reality. You will not always feel like doing the work. In fact, most days you won't. And that is completely normal. The difference is whether you do it anyway. Now let's also address what discipline isn't, because this matters. Discipline is not rigidity. A disciplined person isn't someone who has zero flexibility. Life happens. Plans change. A disciplined person adapts, but they don't use unexpected circumstances as an excuse to abandon their commitments entirely. Discipline is not punishment. If you find yourself using discipline as a way to shame yourself, beat yourself up, or suffer for suffering's sake, that's not discipline. That's self-destruction. True discipline is rooted in self-respect, not self-hatred. Discipline is not the absence of rest. This is one of the biggest misconceptions, especially in hustle culture. Rest is not the opposite of discipline. Rest is part of discipline. Knowing when to recover, when to slow down, when to say no, that takes more discipline than just grinding nonstop. Discipline is not a personality trait you either have or don't have. This is the one I want to hammer home the hardest. Discipline is a skill. And like any skill, it can be learned, practiced, and strengthened over time. You are not born disciplined or undisciplined. You become one or the other based on the habits, systems, and beliefs you cultivate. This is important because it means no matter where you're starting from, whether you've never kept a commitment to yourself in your life, whether you've failed 100 times, Whether you feel like the least disciplined person you know, you can build this. Starting today. Section 3. Why discipline is strength, the science behind it. Okay, so we've established what discipline is. Now let's talk about why it's the most powerful thing you can develop. And I mean that literally, not just philosophically. The prefrontal cortex and self-control. Your brain has two primary operating systems when it comes to decision-making. The first is your limbic system, the emotional brain. It's ancient, it's fast, and it's wired for immediate pleasure and threat avoidance. When you see a slice of pizza while you're trying to eat clean, that's your limbic system firing up. When you hit snooze instead of getting up to work out, that's the limbic system winning. The second is your prefrontal cortex, the rational brain. This is the part responsible for long-term planning, impulse control, weighing consequences, and making decisions based on values rather than feelings. This is the seat of discipline. Here's the fascinating part. Every time you exercise discipline, you literally strengthen your prefrontal cortex. Neuroscientists call this experience-dependent neuroplasticity. Your brain physically changes based on what you repeatedly do. Think of discipline like a muscle. When you resist the urge to check your phone during deep work, you're doing a rep. When you get up and go to the gym, even though you're tired, you're doing a rep. When you choose the salad over the burger because it aligns with your health goals, you're doing a rep. Over time, those reps add up. The neural pathways for self-control become stronger, faster, and more automatic. What once felt like an exhausting battle of willpower starts to feel like second nature. The ego depletion debate and what it actually means for you. Now, you may have heard of a concept called ego depletion, the idea that willpower is like a battery that drains throughout the day. The early research suggested that after making a lot of decisions or resisting temptations, your self-control gets worse. This concept became hugely popular. And while more recent research has complicated the original findings, some studies weren't replicated, there's a practical truth hidden in here that absolutely still applies. Decision fatigue is real. Even if your willpower doesn't deplete like a battery, the mental energy required to constantly fight your impulses does add up. This is why people tend to make worse food choices at night. It's why you're more likely to snap at someone when you're stressed and tired. And the takeaway isn't, willpower is limited, so don't bother. The takeaway is, design your environment and your routines so that discipline requires as little conscious willpower as possible. We'll get into exactly how to do that later. But just keep this in mind. Building discipline isn't about white-knuckling your way through every decision. It's about stacking the deck in your favor so good choices become easier and bad choices become harder. The compounding effect of consistent action. Here's a concept that completely changed how I think about discipline. The compounding effect. Most people understand compounding in the context of money. You invest $1,000, it earns interest. That interest earns more interest, and over 30 years you end up with way more than you ever put in. Small, consistent inputs compound into massive outputs over time. The same principle applies to every area of your life. Reading 20 pages a day doesn't feel like much, but in a year, that's roughly 24 books. In a decade, that's 240 books. Over time, the knowledge compounds. Concepts connect, patterns emerge. Your thinking deepens in ways that are impossible to achieve through occasional bursts of intense reading. Working out 4 days a week doesn't feel transformative in week 1. But after 6 months, the results are undeniable. After 5 years, your body, your health, your energy levels, they are categorically different from where you started. The problem is that compounding is invisible in the short term. In the early stages, it looks like nothing is working. You're putting in the effort and not seeing the results. This is the phase where most people quit. This is the phase that discipline is specifically designed to carry you through. Because discipline says, I don't need to see the results yet. I know the math works. I'm going to keep doing the work anyway. That's not blind faith. That's strategic patience, backed by understanding how growth actually works. Section 4, the 5 pillars of discipline. Now let's get practical. Discipline isn't one thing, it's a constellation of interconnected habits and mindsets. I've broken it down into 5 core pillars. build these, and you build an unshakable foundation. Pillar 1, clarity. Know what you're being disciplined toward. This is the most overlooked pillar, and it's the reason most people fail before they even start. You cannot be disciplined in a vacuum. Discipline needs a direction. Without clarity on what you actually want, and more importantly, why you want it, discipline feels like running on a treadmill. Exhausting, going nowhere. Think about it. It's easy to stay disciplined about something you deeply care about. Athletes who make it to the Olympics aren't grinding because they heard a motivational speech. They're grinding because they have a crystal clear vision of who they want to become, and every training session is a vote for that identity. So the first question you need to answer is, what are you building? Not in a vague, I want to be successful kind of way. I mean specific, concrete, measurable. Not, I want to get in shape, but I want to be able to run a 5K in under 25 minutes by the end of the year. Not, I want to be financially free, but I want to have $50,000 in savings and zero credit card debt by the time I'm 35. Not, I want to build a business, but I want to generate $10,000 a month in revenue from my online consulting practice within 18 months. When your goal is specific, it creates a clear decision filter. Every choice you make either moves you toward that goal or away from it. That clarity makes discipline dramatically easier because now it's not about willpower, it's about alignment. Practical exercise. Write down your top 3 goals right now. Under each goal, write your why and push past the surface answer. Keep asking why until you hit something emotionally true. That emotional core is your fuel. Pillar 2, systems. Replace willpower with design. Willpower is unreliable. Systems are not. This is one of the most game-changing insights in the field of behavioral psychology. Humans are not primarily rational decision makers. We are creatures of environment and habit. The choices we make are heavily influenced by the context we're in, far more than we realize. What does this mean practically? It means that if you want to eat healthier, don't rely on willpower at 9 p.m. when you're tired and there's a bag of chips on your kitchen counter. Remove the chips. Stock the fridge with food that aligns with your goals. Now the disciplined choice is the easy choice because it's the only choice. If you want to work out in the morning, don't rely on motivation to get you out of bed. Set out your gym clothes the night before. Schedule it in your calendar like a meeting you can't cancel. Find an accountability partner who's waiting for you. Now, the friction of not going is higher than the friction of going. This principle is called environmental design, and it's one of the most powerful tools for building discipline without exhausting your willpower. Here are some specific strategies. 1. Reduce friction for good habits. Make the behaviors you want to do as easy and accessible as possible. Keep your journal on your pillow so you see it before bed. Keep your guitar in the middle of the room, not in a case in the closet. Put your running shoes by the front door. Reduce the number of steps between you and the good habit. 2. Increase friction for bad habits. Make the behaviors you don't want to do harder to access. Delete social media apps from your phone. You can still access them on desktop if you truly need to, but that extra friction matters. Keep junk food out of the house. Put your phone in another room when you're working. 3. Use implementation intentions. This is a research-backed technique that dramatically improves follow-through. Instead of saying, I'll exercise more, say, I will go to the gym every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 a.m., and I will do a 45-minute strength training session. Research by psychologist Peter Gollwitzer shows that people who use implementation intentions, specific if-then plans, are significantly more likely to follow through on their goals compared to people who just set vague intentions. 4. Build routines and rituals. Routines are one of the most powerful discipline tools because they automate decision-making. When something is part of your routine, you don't have to decide whether to do it, you just do it, because that's what you do at that time. Morning routines in particular are powerful because they set the tone for the entire day. A solid morning routine that includes movement, intentional thinking, and focused work creates psychological momentum that carries forward. 5. Batch similar tasks. Context switching is a massive drain on your mental energy. Every time you switch from one type of task to another, your brain has to reload. By batching similar tasks together, all calls in the afternoon, all creative work in the morning, all admin tasks on Friday, you reduce that cognitive load and make it easier to stay on track. Pillar 3, identity. Become the person who does the thing. This is where we move from behavioral strategies to something deeper, identity. Here's a pattern I've noticed in people who successfully build lasting discipline. They don't just change their actions, they change how they see themselves. There's a huge difference between these two statements. I'm trying to quit smoking versus I'm not a smoker. The first is about behavior change. The second is about identity change. An identity-based change is dramatically more durable because your actions are ultimately an expression of who you believe you are. If you believe you're a healthy person, you don't need to fight yourself every time there's a salad versus burger choice. The healthy person chooses the salad because that's what healthy people do. It's not a struggle, it's self-expression. James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, describes this as a two-loop model. Most people try to change their outcomes. I want to lose 30 pounds by changing their behaviors. I'll go to the gym. But the most effective approach starts at the identity level. Who is the person I want to become? And then, and this is key, use every small action as a vote for that identity. Every time you go to the gym, you cast a vote for the identity of someone who works out regularly. Every time you write for 30 minutes, you cast a vote for I'm a writer. Every time you choose the long term over the short term, you cast a vote for I'm a disciplined person. You don't need a perfect record. You just need a majority vote. This reframe is incredibly powerful because it means, 1, small wins matter enormously, not because of the direct result, but because of the identity they reinforce. 2, failure doesn't have to derail you, because one missed day doesn't negate hundreds of votes you've already cast. 3, discipline stops feeling like external pressure and starts feeling like authentic self-expression. Practical exercise, write a short identity statement for the disciplined version of yourself. Not who you are now, but who you're becoming. Something like, I am someone who honors my commitments, does the work even when it's hard, and shows up consistently for the things that matter. Read this every morning. It sounds simple. It's not. Over time, this statement shapes how you make decisions throughout the day. Pillar 4, resilience. Treat setbacks as data, not defeat. If there's one thing that separates people who build lasting discipline from people who perpetually struggle with it, it's how they respond to failure. Here's the truth. You will miss days. You will fall off the wagon. You will have weeks where everything falls apart. This is not a sign that you lack discipline. This is just called being human. The problem isn't the setback itself. The problem is what most people do after a setback. They spiral. One missed workout becomes 2. 2 becomes a week. A week becomes, I'm just not a gym person. They use the miss as evidence that they were right not to believe in themselves. This pattern has a name in psychology, the abstinence violation effect. It's the all or nothing thinking that turns a single slip into a full relapse. I already ate the donut, so the diet is ruined. Might as well eat the whole box. The antidote is what researchers call self-compassion combined with accountability. Not self-pity, not making excuses, but also not brutal self-criticism. The conversation after a setback should sound like this. Okay, I didn't do what I said I was going to do today. That's a fact. Let me understand why. Was I overcommitted? Tired? Did something unexpected happen? What can I learn from this? And what's one concrete thing I can do right now to get back on track? Notice what that conversation does. It acknowledges the reality without drama. It gets curious instead of judgmental. It immediately focuses on the path forward. This is disciplined thinking, applied to discipline itself. There's also a powerful rule I love called the never miss twice rule. The idea is simple. You're allowed to miss once. Life happens, but you commit to never missing the same thing twice in a row. One miss is an accident. 2 misses is the beginning of a new habit. This rule removes perfectionism from the equation, which is crucial because perfectionism is one of the biggest enemies of discipline. Perfectionists often do nothing rather than do something imperfectly. But in the world of compounding, showing up imperfectly is infinitely better than not showing up at all. Pillar 5, accountability. You need skin in the game. The final pillar is one that many people resist because it requires vulnerability, accountability. There's extensive research showing that people are far more likely to follow through on goals when they share them with others, especially when there are real consequences for not following through. This isn't about needing external validation. It's about human psychology. We are wired to care about what others think of us. That social pressure, when channeled correctly, is a powerful force for good. Here are several forms of accountability and how to use them. 1. Accountability partners. Find someone with similar goals and agree to check in with each other regularly, daily, weekly, whatever works. This doesn't have to be formal. A simple text every morning saying, "Here's what I'm committing to today," and a text at night saying, "Here's what I actually did," can be incredibly powerful. The key is choosing the right person, someone who will be honest with you, not just supportive. You don't need a cheerleader. You need a truth teller. 2. Public commitment. There's something powerful about declaring your goals publicly, on social media, to your family, in a community. Once you've told people what you're going to do, the social cost of quitting becomes real. Use that. 3. Coaches and mentors. If you have the resources, working with a coach, whether in fitness, business, or any other domain, dramatically accelerates progress. A good coach doesn't just provide knowledge. They provide structure, accountability, and the kind of outside perspective that's impossible to have on yourself. 4. Tracking and journaling. Sometimes the most powerful accountability is simply with yourself, but in a structured way. Keeping a daily log of your habits, tracking your progress in a visible way. Habit trackers are great for this, and journaling about your wins and struggles keeps you honest with yourself. There's a famous management principle. What gets measured gets managed. The same applies to personal discipline. When you're tracking your habits, you're creating data. That data tells you the truth about your consistency, your patterns, and your progress, without the distortions of memory or self-perception. Section 5, the enemies of discipline and how to defeat them. We've talked about how to build discipline. Now let's talk about what tears it down. There are 5 major enemies of discipline, and if you don't know how to recognize and combat them, they will sabotage you every time. Enemy 1, instant gratification culture. We live in the most distraction-rich environment in human history. Dopamine is being harvested from us at an industrial scale. Every app, every platform, every notification is specifically engineered by teams of brilliant people to capture your attention and keep it. The average American checks their phone 96 times a day. That's once every 10 minutes during waking hours. Every one of those checks is a tiny hit of dopamine, a tiny reward for no real work done. And each hit raises your baseline, making it harder to feel satisfied by slower, deeper pleasures like focused work, reading, or face-to-face connection. This is called dopamine dysregulation, and it's one of the most serious threats to discipline in the modern world. The fix isn't to demonize technology. The fix is to become intentional about it. Implement phone-free blocks during your most important work. Turn off all non-essential notifications permanently. Use apps like Freedom or Cold Turkey to block distracting sites during work hours. Create a dopamine detox practice. Periods of time where you deliberately choose low-stimulation activities to reset your baseline. When you lower the noise, the signal gets louder. Focused work starts to feel more rewarding. Patience becomes easier. The long game becomes more appealing. Enemy 2, perfectionism. We touched on this earlier, but it deserves its own section. Perfectionism masquerades as high standards, but it's actually a form of fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not being good enough. The perfectionist says, "I'll start when the timing is right, when I have more resources, when I'm more prepared, when I know I can do it perfectly." And so they never start. Or they start and quit the moment things get messy. Here's the antidote. Embrace the good enough to ship standard. This doesn't mean doing sloppy work. It means understanding that a done thing is infinitely more valuable than a perfect thing that never gets finished. It means being willing to show up imperfect, because imperfect action beats perfect inaction every single time. The best athletes, the best writers, the best entrepreneurs, they're not perfect. They're just relentlessly willing to do the work in its current imperfect form and improve over time. Progress is iterative. Build the habit first, optimize later. Enemy 3, comparison. Theodore Roosevelt famously said that comparison is the thief of joy. I'd add, comparison is also the thief of discipline. When you're constantly measuring your progress against someone else's highlight reel, two things happen. One, you undervalue your own progress because you're comparing your beginning to someone else's middle. Two, you lose sight of your own path because you start chasing someone else's vision instead of your own. Discipline requires laser focus. Every unit of mental energy you spend comparing yourself to others is energy you're not spending on your own work. The only valid comparison is you today versus you yesterday. Are you better than you were? Are you closer to your goals than you were a month ago? That's the only metric that matters. Enemy 4, chronic stress and poor recovery. This one is often invisible. People think they lack discipline when actually they're just chronically depleted. When you're running on poor sleep, high cortisol, inadequate nutrition, and zero recovery time, your prefrontal cortex literally doesn't function properly. Your ability to regulate impulses, think long-term, and resist temptation is biologically impaired. This is why self-care isn't soft. Sleep, nutrition, exercise, and stress management are the infrastructure of discipline. Without them, all the motivation and strategy in the world won't save you. The discipline to protect your recovery is just as important as the discipline to do the work. This means prioritizing 7 to 9 hours of sleep like it's a non-negotiable appointment. Building real recovery into your training schedule, not as a reward, but as a requirement. Managing your stress inputs proactively through exercise, mindfulness, time in nature, or whatever works for you. Being ruthless about your energy, knowing which people, environments, and activities drain you versus replenish you. Enemy 5, lack of momentum. This last enemy is subtle but powerful, the inertia of not starting. Newton's first law of motion applies to human behavior as much as physics. An object at rest tends to stay at rest. An object in motion tends to stay in motion. Once you stop, once you break the chain of consistent action, it becomes exponentially harder to restart. Not because you've lost ability, but because you've lost momentum. And starting from zero is psychologically harder than continuing. This is why the best time to start is now, not Monday, not the first of the month, not after the vacation or the holiday or the big work project. Now, even in the smallest possible way. 5 minutes of work, 1 set at the gym, 1 paragraph written, 1 healthy meal. The action itself is less important than the momentum it creates. There's a concept called the 2-minute rule, made popular by James Clear, but rooted in behavioral science. If a habit takes less than 2 minutes to start, do it right now. And for bigger habits, make the first version of the habit something that can be done in 2 minutes, just to get yourself moving. Run a marathon. Start by putting on your running shoes and walking to the end of the block. Write a book. Start by opening the document and writing 1 sentence. Meditate for 20 minutes. Start by sitting in silence for 2 minutes. The 2-minute version isn't the goal, it's the ignition. Once you're moving, it's far easier to keep moving. Section 6, discipline in the real world. Applied strategies for every area of life. Theory is great, but discipline only matters when it shows up in real life. Let me walk you through how to apply everything we've talked about in the areas that matter most. Discipline in your health and body. Your body is the vehicle for everything else in your life. Without physical discipline, everything else suffers. Your energy, your focus, your mood, your relationships, your productivity. Here's what consistent physical discipline looks like in practice. Sleep first. Before you optimize anything else, lock down your sleep. 7 to 9 hours is not a luxury. It's a non-negotiable biological requirement. Set a consistent sleep and wake time, even on weekends. This single habit has a cascading positive effect on every other area of discipline. Move your body every day. It doesn't have to be a 2-hour gym session. A 30-minute walk counts. A 20-minute workout counts. The point is to make movement a daily non-negotiable, not something you do when you have time. Build a sustainable nutrition framework. Not a diet, a framework. A set of eating principles that align with your goals and that you can maintain long-term. Because discipline in nutrition isn't about eating perfectly. It's about not using temporary emotional states to make long-term dietary decisions. Track your habits. Use a simple habit tracker, paper or app, to create a visual chain of consistency. Jerry Seinfeld famously used a wall calendar and a red marker to track his daily writing practice. Every day he wrote, he put an X. The goal? Don't break the chain. Simple. Effective. Discipline in your work and productivity. This is where most people feel the gap between who they are and who they want to be most acutely. Time blocking. Schedule your most important work first, in deep focused blocks of 60 to 90 minutes. Protect these blocks like meetings with your most important client. Close email. Close tabs. Put your phone in another room. Deep work is where your most valuable output comes from, and it requires an environment that's actively designed for focus. The MIT principle. Every morning, before you open email or check anything, identify your most important task for the day. The single thing that, if done, would make the day a success. Do that first. Everything else is secondary. Default schedules. Create a template for your ideal week, not what you're doing now, but what you'd be doing if you were operating at your highest level. Block time for deep work, meetings, learning, exercise, and recovery. Then, as much as possible, use that template as your default. You won't always hit it perfectly, but having a clear structure to return to is far better than starting every week from scratch. Ruthlessly eliminate low-value tasks. Discipline isn't just about doing more. It's about doing the right things and eliminating the rest. Time auditing. Tracking where your time actually goes for a week is one of the most eye-opening exercises you can do. Most people are shocked by how much time disappears into low-value activities they didn't consciously choose. Discipline in your relationships. This one doesn't get talked about nearly enough, but it's massive. Discipline in relationships looks like keeping your word consistently to your partner, your friends, your family. Being present when you're with people rather than half there and half on your phone. Having difficult conversations instead of avoiding them. Because the short-term discomfort of honesty is almost always less damaging than the long-term erosion of trust that comes from avoidance. Being intentional about who you spend your time with, because the people in your life have an enormous influence on your habits, your mindset, and your trajectory. Jim Rohn's famous quote, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." That's not just a motivational line, it's a behavioral reality. Research on social influence and habit formation consistently shows that the behaviors, attitudes, and ambitions of the people around you shape yours, often without you realizing it. Disciplined people protect their environment, and their social environment is the most important environment of all. Discipline in your finances. Financial discipline is one of the clearest demonstrations of long-term thinking over short-term feeling. The core principle is simple. Spend less than you earn and invest the difference. That's it. The complexity is in the execution. Automate the right behaviors. Set up automatic transfers to your savings and investment accounts the day your paycheck hits. Pay yourself first. What you don't see, you won't spend. This is environmental design applied to finances, making the disciplined choice the default choice. Understand your spending triggers. Most overspending isn't rational, it's emotional. Stress shopping, boredom scrolling that ends in impulse buying, keeping up with appearances. Identify your emotional spending triggers and build systems to create friction between the trigger and the purchase. A 24-hour rule for non-essential purchases over a certain amount is a simple, powerful tool. Define financial freedom in concrete terms. Just like with any goal, vague aspirations don't create discipline. Knowing exactly what you're building toward, a specific savings target, an investment milestone, a debt payoff date, gives your financial discipline a clear direction. Discipline in your mindset and mental health. This is the meta level, the discipline that supports all other disciplines. Morning journaling. 10 to 15 minutes of writing every morning, not for performance, but for clarity. Write about your intentions for the day, what you're grateful for, what you're working through. This practice creates a disciplined relationship with your own mind, rather than letting your thoughts run on autopilot. Meditation and mindfulness. I know this gets eye rolls, but the research is extraordinarily clear. A consistent meditation practice, even just 10 minutes a day, improves attention, reduces reactivity, and strengthens self-regulation, all of which are core components of discipline. Reading. Specifically, reading books that challenge your thinking, expand your perspective, and deepen your understanding. A daily reading habit is one of the highest ROI investments you can make in yourself. Knowledge compounds. Ideas generate more ideas. The more you read, the better you think. Mental input control. Be deliberate about what you consume. The news you watch, the podcasts you listen to, the social feeds you scroll, all of this shapes your mental environment. Just as you'd avoid physically toxic environments, avoid mentally toxic content that leaves you anxious, reactive, or distracted without adding any real value. Section 7. The long game. Why discipline creates freedom. Here's the beautiful paradox that I want to close the content section with. Most people think discipline and freedom are opposites. That to be disciplined means to be constrained, bound by rules, schedules, and obligations. But the people who have actually built disciplined lives will tell you the complete opposite is true. Discipline creates freedom. Think about what the absence of discipline actually looks like. It's waking up without intention, being pulled from one distraction to the next. It's saying yes to everything and committing to nothing. It's being at the mercy of your impulses, your moods, and other people's agendas. It's spending your days reacting instead of creating. That's not freedom. That's chaos with the illusion of freedom. True freedom, the freedom to do meaningful work, to build the life you actually want, to show up as the best version of yourself, is earned through discipline. The person who is disciplined about their finances has the freedom to quit a job they hate. The person disciplined about their health has the freedom of energy, vitality, and longevity. The person disciplined about their craft has the freedom of options, because competence creates opportunity. Jocko Willink said it best. Discipline equals freedom. Not metaphorically, literally. Every act of discipline is a down payment on a future version of your life that is freer, more capable, more fulfilled than the one you're living today. And here's the thing about building discipline over years. The person you become in the process is worth more than any goal you achieve. Because goals end. The finish line is crossed. The project is completed. The milestone is reached. But who you are, the resilience, the focus, the integrity, the capacity to do hard things, that stays with you forever. It transfers to every new challenge. It shapes every relationship. It determines your ceiling. A disciplined person isn't just more productive. They're more trustworthy, more present, more intentional, more free. That's the real prize. So here's the bottom line. Discipline isn't about being perfect. It's not about grinding yourself into the ground. It's about showing up consistently, intentionally, and on purpose, even when you don't feel like it. It's the morning you push through, the habit you protect, the long game you choose over the easy exit. Discipline is not a cage, it's the key. And the life you want? It's already waiting on the other side of the work you've been avoiding. Start today, not Monday, today. If this hit different, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe if you haven't already. New content drops every week designed to help you level up for real. And drop a comment below. I want to know, what's the one area of your life where you're committing to more discipline starting right now? I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for your watching.